God has seen your pain. Your time is coming. There are moments in life when silence feels louder than noise. When the world keeps moving, people keep laughing, and yet inside you there is a quiet weight that no one seems to notice. You pray, you wait, you endure, and sometimes you begin to wonder if God has forgotten you. If your tears fell unseen, if your nights of struggle meant nothing. But the truth is far deeper, far more sacred, and far more powerful than what your current circumstances suggest. God has seen everything. Every moment you felt abandoned, every time you held yourself together when no one else cared. Every prayer whispered in exhaustion, nothing has gone unnoticed, and what you are living right now is not punishment. It is preparation. There is a divine pattern that repeats throughout history and scripture. Before elevation, there is isolation. Before restoration, there is breaking. Before clarity, there is confusion. And before God moves publicly in your life, He works privately in your soul. What you are experiencing now is not delay. It is alignment. It is the silent phase before acceleration. The season where strength is formed, wisdom is planted, and endurance is refined. You may feel tired. You may feel misunderstood. You may even feel forgotten. But the very fact that you are still standing, still searching, still believing, even when everything feels heavy, is proof that something powerful is unfolding behind the scenes. God does not waste pain. He uses it. He shapes it. He transforms it into purpose. This message is not meant to comfort you with empty words. It is meant to awaken you, to remind you that what you are walking through now is not the end of your story. It is the preparation for what is coming. Your time is not delayed. It is being carefully arranged. And now, let us begin with the first truth you must understand. God sees the pain you never spoke about. There is a kind of pain that never finds words, the kind you carry quietly, the kind you learn to live with, because explaining it would take too much energy, or because you fear no one would understand. This is the pain God notices first. Not the public struggles, not the visible tears, but the silent battles you fight alone. You see, God does not only see actions, He sees intentions, He sees thoughts. He sees the moments when you smiled in front of others but collapsed inside when you were alone. He sees the nights you couldn't sleep because your mind wouldn't rest. He sees the questions you were afraid to ask out loud, and most importantly, He sees the strength it took for you to keep going when giving up would have been easier. Many people believe that if God truly cared, suffering would disappear instantly, but spiritual growth does not work that way. If it did, character would never form, faith would never deepen, wisdom would never mature. What feels like abandonment is often divine restraint, God allowing you to develop what you will need for the next chapter of your life. There are seasons when God is silent, not because He is absent, but because He is teaching you to listen differently. He is teaching you to trust without signs, to walk without constant reassurance, to believe even when nothing around you makes sense. Your pain has not gone unnoticed. Every disappointment, every betrayal, every moment of confusion has been recorded in ways you cannot see yet. And when the time comes, you will realize that the very experiences you thought were breaking, you were shaping the strength that will carry you forward. Some of the strongest people are not those who never suffered, but those who learned how to stand while hurting, those who continued to love while being misunderstood, those who kept their integrity when it would have been easier to become bitter. God watches those moments closely. And here is something most people never realize. When life becomes quiet, when doors close, when people walk away, it is often because God is removing distractions. He is clearing space. He is protecting you from paths that would have delayed your destiny. Not everything that leaves your life is a loss. Sometimes it is a release. You may feel unseen, but heaven sees you clearly. You may feel forgotten, but your name has not been erased. You may feel like nothing is happening, but something is being prepared beyond your understanding. And this is the hardest part to accept. Sometimes God allows you to feel weak, so you stop relying on your own strength. Because the moment you surrender control, the moment you stop forcing outcomes, the moment you trust instead of chasing, that is when things begin to shift. Your pain has not been wasted. Your tears have not been ignored. Your patience has not been in vain. What you are experiencing now is not punishment. It is positioning. And the time that feels like waiting is actually the time when everything is being arranged in your favor. There comes a point in life when pain stops feeling like chaos and starts feeling like instruction, not because it hurts less, but because you begin to sense that something deeper is happening beneath the surface. This is the moment when the soul starts to awaken to a truth most people never reach, that waiting is not wasted time and silence is not abandonment. It is in these moments that you begin to understand that God's timing is not about delay, but about precision. When you look back at your life, you may notice that the most important changes never happened when you were in a hurry. They happened after long seasons of uncertainty, after moments when you felt stripped of control, after periods where nothing seemed to move forward. That is not coincidence. That is design. Because growth that lasts is never rushed. It is built slowly, layer by layer, in ways that strengthen the foundation rather than decorate the surface. Many people believe that if something is meant for them, it should come easily. But the truth is often the opposite. What carries true meaning usually arrives after resistance, after endurance, after inner transformation. If it came easily, it would leave just as easily. If it required no patience, it would require no maturity to hold. This is why the waiting feels so heavy. Because it is not empty waiting. It is formative waiting. A period where your inner world is being shaped to match the future you're asking for. A time where your character is being refined, your motives purified, and your strength tested quietly. You may feel like nothing is happening, but in reality, something very important is unfolding. Your reactions are changing. Your perspective is deepening. Your tolerance for shallow things is fading. You no longer chase what once distracted you. You begin to crave meaning over noise, truth over comfort, depth over approval. These shifts are not accidental. They are signs that you are evolving. God does not prepare blessings the way humans prepare gifts. He prepares the person first, because if the person is not ready, the blessing becomes a burden. What you are going through now is not about punishment or denial. It is about alignment, about shaping you into someone who can receive without losing themselves. There are lessons that can only be learned through waiting. Patience is one of them. Trust is another. And perhaps the most difficult one of all, surrender. Not surrender in the sense of giving up, but surrender in the sense of letting go of the illusion of control, accepting that some things unfold only when you stop forcing them. You may not realize it yet, but this season is teaching you how to stand on your own emotionally, how to find stability within yourself rather than in external validation, how to remain grounded when circumstances shift. These qualities cannot be taught through success. They are born through uncertainty. There is a reason why some of the strongest people you will ever meet went through long periods of isolation, disappointment, or silence. Strength that lasts is forged in solitude. Clarity that endures is born in confusion. Faith that holds firm is built in moments when nothing seems to make sense. You are learning how to trust without proof, how to move forward without guarantees, how to believe even when you cannot see the outcome. And this kind of faith changes a person permanently. It reshapes the way you see the world, the way you respond to adversity, and the way you carry yourself through life. What feels like delay is often protection. You are being shielded from paths that would have led to unnecessary pain. You are being kept from connections that would have drained you. You are being guided away from versions of life that looked appealing but would have left you empty. And yes, It is frustrating, it is exhausting, sometimes it feels unfair, but one day you will look back and realize that the timing was exact. That if things had happened earlier, you would not have been ready. That if doors had opened sooner, you might have walked into something you were not meant to carry. This season is not about speed, it is about depth, about becoming stable enough to handle what is coming, about developing discernment so you don't mistake noise for purpose, about learning to listen before acting, to observe before reacting, to trust before demanding. There is something being built inside you that cannot be rushed, a quiet strength, a steady confidence, a calm resilience. These qualities cannot be rushed into existence. They must be lived into, slowly, patiently, sometimes painfully. And one day, without warning, things will begin to move, not in chaos, not in confusion, but with clarity. Doors will open naturally, answers will come without struggle, opportunities will align without force, and you will realize that everything you endured was shaping you for that exact moment. You will understand that the waiting was not a pause in your life, but a preparation for it, that the silence was not emptiness, but refinement, that the pain was not punishment, but transformation. And when that moment arrives, you will not need to rush. You will not need to prove yourself. You will not need to chase what belongs to you, because what is meant for you will recognize you when the time is right. And the time is coming. There comes a moment in every long season of waiting when the mind begins to question the heart, when doubt quietly asks whether all this endurance truly has meaning, when fatigue whispers that maybe nothing is happening at all. This is the most dangerous part of the journey, not because something is wrong, but because something important is about to change. It is often right before transformation that the weight feels heaviest, the silence feels longest, and the uncertainty feels unbearable. What you may not realize is that this moment is not a sign of failure. It is a sign of transition. It is the point where the old version of you begins to loosen its grip, and the new version has not yet fully emerged. This in-between space is uncomfortable because it requires trust without evidence. It asks you to keep moving forward without clarity. It asks you to believe in growth you cannot yet see. Most people mistake this phase for stagnation. They assume that because nothing visible is changing, nothing meaningful is happening. But the deepest changes do not announce themselves. They happen beneath the surface, where roots grow before branches appear. They happen in thought patterns, in emotional responses, in the quiet reshaping of perspective. You begin to notice that certain things no longer trigger you the way they once did, that situations that used to drain you now feel distant, that your reactions are slower, calmer, more intentional. These are not coincidences. They are signs of inner alignment. They mean that something within you is stabilizing. There is a kind of strength that only comes from enduring uncertainty, not the loud strength that demands attention, but the quiet strength that remains steady when everything else wavers. This strength does not need validation. It does not rush. It does not panic. It understands that growth cannot be forced and that clarity arrives in its own time. During this phase, many people are tempted to go back to what is familiar, even if it no longer serves them. Familiar pain often feels safer than unknown possibility. But returning to what you have outgrown will only delay what is trying to emerge. That discomfort you feel is not a sign to retreat. It is a sign that you are standing at the edge of expansion. This is the season where patience becomes power, where restraint becomes wisdom, where silence becomes strength. You are learning how to sit with uncertainty without letting it define you. You are learning how to move forward without needing constant reassurance. You are learning how to trust the process even when it feels slow. And this is not accidental, because the life that is being prepared for you requires stability. It requires clarity. It requires a sense of self that is not easily shaken by external circumstances. The waiting is shaping that stability, The stillness is sharpening your awareness. The uncertainty is teaching you resilience. You may feel like you are walking alone, but in truth, you are being guided inward, away from distractions, away from noise, away from the need to prove yourself, toward something deeper, quieter, more grounded, toward a version of yourself that does not depend on approval to feel worthy. There is also something important happening emotionally during this time. Old attachments are loosening, old expectations are dissolving. You are beginning to understand that not everything you once wanted is aligned with who you are becoming. Some desires fall away not because you failed, but because you evolved. This can feel like loss, but it is actually clarity. It is the shedding of what no longer matches your frequency. It is the quiet closing of doors you no longer need to walk through. And although it may feel lonely at times, it is also freeing. You are learning to stand without leaning, to breathe without rushing, to exist without constantly chasing the next thing. This is not stagnation. This is grounding. This is the calm before movement, the stillness before momentum. Many people reach this point and turn back because the unknown feels too heavy. But those who continue discover something powerful on the other side. Peace that does not depend on circumstances. Confidence that does not need applause. Faith that does not collapse when answers are delayed. This is where real transformation takes place, not in dramatic moments, but in quiet persistence, in choosing to keep going when no one is watching, in choosing integrity when shortcuts are available, in choosing patience when frustration would be easier. You are being prepared for a version of life that requires emotional strength, discernment, and self-trust. And these qualities cannot be rushed. They are built through experience, reflection, and endurance. There will come a moment when you realize that the waiting has changed you, that you are calmer, stronger, more grounded, less reactive, more aware. And when that moment comes, you will understand why everything had to happen the way it did. You will see that what once felt like delay was actually alignment, that what once felt like silence was actually instruction, that what once felt like loss was actually redirection. And when the next chapter begins, it will not feel chaotic or forced. It will feel natural, steady. Right? You will move forward not because you are desperate for change, but because you are ready for it. This is the quiet work that happens before breakthrough, the internal realignment that makes external transformation possible, the unseen preparation that gives meaning to everything that comes next. And you are closer now than you realize. There is a stage in the journey where the external world begins to quiet down, not because life has become easier, but because you have changed the way you perceive it. This is one of the most subtle yet powerful transitions a person can experience. You start to notice that the chaos around you no longer controls your emotions the way it once did. The noise still exists, the challenges still arise, but something inside you remains steady. This is not coincidence. This is the result of inner alignment. At this point, something profound begins to happen. You stop chasing answers and start receiving clarity, not through sudden revelations or dramatic signs, but through a calm understanding that settles within you. You begin to recognize patterns. You start to see why certain things had to fall apart. You understand why certain people had to leave. You realize that much of what you once fought to hold on to would have kept you stuck. This phase is marked by a deep internal shift. You no longer feel the need to explain yourself to everyone. You no longer feel the urgency to prove your worth. You no longer measure your progress by external standards. Instead, you begin to trust your inner sense of direction. You listen more. You react less. You observe before acting. And this change is powerful because it is permanent. What is happening now is the integration of everything you have endured. Every disappointment, every delay, every unanswered prayer is being woven into a new understanding of yourself and your place in the world. You are no longer defined by what happened to you. You are defined by what you learned from it. There is a maturity that comes only after deep struggle, a calm that is not naive but earned, a peace that does not come from comfort but from clarity. This is the kind of peace you are stepping into now. You begin to realize that not everything needs to be fixed immediately. Not every question needs an answer right away. Not every emotion needs to be acted upon. Some things are meant to be felt, processed, and released in their own time. This is where wisdom begins to take root. You may notice that you are becoming more selective with your energy, that certain conversations no longer interest you, that certain environments feel draining rather than stimulating. This is not isolation, this is discernment. You are learning to protect your inner space, to preserve your peace, to choose depth over noise. And with that comes a powerful realization: you do not need to chase what is meant for you. What is aligned will find you when you are ready. What belongs to you will not require desperation, anxiety, or force. It will arrive with a sense of rightness, of calm certainty. This understanding changes the way you move through life. You stop rushing. You stop comparing. You stop doubting your own pace. You realize that your journey does not need to look like anyone else's to be valid. There is also a quiet confidence growing within you. Not arrogance, not pride, but a grounded sense of self. You know what you have survived. You know what you are capable of enduring. You know that you have walked through darkness and emerged stronger. This knowledge cannot be taken from you. At this stage, even your pain begins to make sense. You see how it shaped your compassion, how it sharpened your awareness, how it taught you empathy. You begin to understand that your struggles were not obstacles, but training. And with that understanding comes a sense of peace that does not depend on circumstances. You stop waiting for everything to be perfect before allowing yourself to feel calm. You stop postponing peace until some future moment. You begin to live in the present with acceptance rather than resistance. This does not mean that you stop desiring growth or change. It means that you no longer tie your worth to outcomes. You trust that what is meant for you will come at the right time, in the right way. This is the moment when many people experience a quiet awakening, not a dramatic one, but a steady realization that they are no longer the same person they were before. Their priorities have shifted. Their perspective has widened. Their reactions have softened. They no longer chase validation. They no longer fear being alone. They no longer cling to what is familiar just to avoid uncertainty. They understand that growth requires space, and space requires letting go. You may find yourself feeling more introspective, more thoughtful, more aware of your inner world. This is not withdrawal. This is integration. You are aligning your inner self with the life you are meant to live. And as this alignment deepens, something else begins to happen. Opportunities start to appear naturally, not forced, not rushed, but aligned. Conversations that feel meaningful, connections that feel purposeful, moments that feel strangely timed in the best possible way. This is not coincidence, this is resonance. When you change internally, the external world responds. When your energy shifts, your experiences shift. When your intentions become clear, your path becomes clearer. This is why the waiting was necessary, because without this internal work, you would not recognize what is meant for you when it arrives. You might have overlooked it, you might have sabotaged it, you might have walked past it without realizing its value, but now you are different. You are calmer, more aware, more grounded, less reactive, more intentional. You are no longer rushing toward life. You are meeting it with presence, and this is the point where everything begins to change, not because you forced it, but because you became ready for it. There comes a moment when everything you have endured finally begins to make sense. Not all at once, not in a dramatic revelation, but in a quiet inner knowing that settles deeply within you. It is the moment when you realize that the struggle was never meant to break you, but to reveal who you truly are. This realization does not arrive with noise. It arrives with peace. You begin to see that the pain you carried was shaping your perception, refining your awareness, strengthening your discernment. You understand that every season of waiting, every unanswered prayer, every moment of loneliness had a purpose that went beyond immediate comfort. It was forming a foundation strong enough to support the life you are now ready to live. At this stage, something profound happens. You stop asking when things will change because you realize that you already have. The urgency fades. The anxiety loosens its grip. The need for external validation loses its power. You begin to trust the flow of life in a way you never could before, not because everything is perfect, but because you understand yourself better. You no longer see delays as punishment. You see them as protection. You no longer interpret silence as abandonment. You recognize it as space for growth. You no longer fear uncertainty because you understand that certainty is not what builds strength, presence does. There is a deep calm that emerges when you finally accept that you cannot control everything and that you were never meant to. Control gives way to trust. Resistance gives way to acceptance. And in that acceptance, something shifts inside you. You begin to feel lighter. Not because your problems disappeared, but because you are no longer carrying them in the same way. You stop fighting reality. You stop resisting what is. You start moving with life instead of against it. This is where true transformation completes its cycle. You realize that you no longer need to prove anything to anyone, that your worth does not depend on achievements, approval, or recognition, that your journey is valid even if no one else understands it, that your growth does not require an audience. There is a quiet confidence that settles in, not arrogance, not pride, but a grounded sense of self. You know who you are. You know what you have survived. You know what you are capable of enduring, and that knowledge gives you peace. At this point, you also begin to recognize how much you have changed. The things that once upset you no longer have the same power. The opinions that once mattered now feel distant. The fears that once controlled you have softened. You are no longer ruled by urgency or desperation. You move differently. You speak differently. You listen more. You react less. You choose your words with care. You choose your energy with intention. You choose where you invest yourself. This is not withdrawal from life. This is alignment with it. You have learned that not every battle needs to be fought, that not every door needs to be opened, that not every explanation is required. You have learned the value of silence, the strength of patience, the wisdom of discernment. And perhaps most importantly, you have learned to trust yourself. This trust is the final piece, because when you trust yourself, you trust the process that shaped you. You trust the decisions you make. You trust the direction you are moving in. You trust that even if challenges arise, you have the strength to face them. This is where peace becomes permanent, not because life becomes easy, but because you become stable. You are no longer waiting for permission to live fully. You are no longer postponing happiness until everything aligns. You understand that peace is not a destination. It is a way of being. And when you reach this point, something remarkable happens. Life begins to respond to you differently. Opportunities appear naturally. Relationships feel more aligned. Choices become clearer. The noise fades. The path simplifies. You no longer chase what is meant for you. It finds you. You no longer fear the unknown. You welcome it with curiosity instead of anxiety. You no longer question your worth. You live from it. This is the reward of the long journey, not material success, not external validation, but inner stability, the kind that cannot be shaken by circumstances, the kind that carries you through storms without losing yourself. And now, as you stand here, looking back at everything you have endured, you can finally see it clearly. Nothing was wasted, not the pain, not the waiting, not the confusion, not the silence. It all led you here, stronger, calmer, wiser, more aware. You were never forgotten. You were never abandoned. You were being prepared. And now your time is coming. There is a moment when everything finally settles inside you, not because life suddenly becomes easy, but because you understand it differently. You no longer search for signs everywhere. You no longer beg for reassurance. You no longer question your worth when things go quiet. You understand now that silence is not absence, it is presence in another form. You realize that everything you walked through shaped you into someone stronger, more aware, more grounded. The pain taught you depth. The waiting taught you patience. The uncertainty taught you faith. And the loneliness taught you self-connection. Nothing was random. Nothing was wasted. What once felt like delay was preparation. What once felt like loss was redirection. What once felt like abandonment was protection. You were never being pushed away from your destiny. You were being guided toward it in the only way that would truly prepare you. Now you stand in a different place. You may not have everything you once wanted, but you have something far more valuable. Clarity. You know what matters. You know what doesn't. You know what you will no longer tolerate. And most importantly, you know who you are becoming. You are no longer the person who doubts every step. You are no longer the one who breaks under uncertainty. You are no longer waiting for permission to live fully. You have learned that strength is quiet, that faith is steady, and that true peace does not depend on circumstances. This is the moment where your inner world aligns with your outer path, where you stop forcing outcomes and start allowing life to unfold, where you move forward not out of fear, but out of trust, where you walk with calm confidence instead of anxious urgency. And from this place, everything changes, not because the world suddenly becomes perfect, but because you are no longer at war with it. You move with intention, you choose with wisdom, you respond with clarity. You carry yourself with a calm that comes only from having survived what once seemed unbearable. You are no longer waiting for your time to come. Your time is already here. It is in the way you think, in the way you see, in the way you move through life with quiet strength, in the way you no longer chase what isn't aligned, in the way you trust yourself to handle whatever comes next. This is what growth looks like. This is what healing feels like. This is what preparation creates. And now, as you step forward, remember this. Nothing you endured was meaningless. Nothing you survived was accidental. Nothing you became was unplanned. You were being shaped for this moment, and the path ahead is ready for you.